are fully costed and fully funded. And that means no tax rises for working people.
Who knows about Brexit?
Yeah, quite.
No one's got a fucking clue what Brexit is.
Danny Dyer, known for his bluntness, recently launched a fiery critique of Labour leader Keir, claiming that his rise to power was based more on conservative missteps than any significant accomplishments of his own. Dyer argued that Starmer's upward climb was due to the Tory party's failures rather than any noteworthy actions taken by Starmer himself. According to Dyer, Labour's recent electoral success was less a testament to Starmer's capabilities and more a result of voter frustration with the Conservatives' repeated failings. Dyer's harsh critique connects with many who feel that Starmer lacks the charisma and commitment needed to lead the Labour Party effectively. By pointing out that Starmer has inherited his position in part due to Tory failures, Dyer highlighted a sentiment of betrayal felt by those who expected Labour to stand up for their needs with genuine dedication. Dyer's frustrations are shared by a large section of the British public who see Starmer as a placeholder rather than an active force in politics, raising questions about the authenticity and value of his leadership. Dyer's criticism of Starmer extends to a broader issue he notices within UK politics: the lack of working-class representation in Parliament. Dyer called for more working-class voices, arguing that political power is too concentrated among individuals from privileged backgrounds.
But I don't wake up every morning thinking about that. I wake up every morning thinking I've got a mandate to change the country. I've got a mandate to improve living standards.
This, he proposes, leads to policies that often overlook the struggles of ordinary Britons. He emphasized that the Labour Party, traditionally the voice of the working class, has shifted away from its roots by failing to represent its core base. In Dyer's eyes, politicians like Starmer, who lack working-class roots, cannot fully understand or prioritize the challenges faced by everyday citizens. By calling attention to this disconnect, Dyer hopes to inspire a larger conversation about the need for diverse voices in politics. He believes that Parliament needs representatives who truly understand the difficulties faced by average Britons, such as rising living costs, job insecurity, and struggling public services. This critique of political privilege connects with many who feel ignored by decision-makers who lack lived experience in these areas. Another key aspect of Dyer's critique centers on Labour's policy direction, particularly regarding its treatment of pensioners. Dyer criticized Starmer's viewpoint on pension reforms, particularly the decision to cut winter fuel payments for millions, arguing that these cuts oppose the party's supposed commitment to supporting vulnerable populations. For many Labour supporters, this policy shift feels like a betrayal, as they expected Labour to prioritize the needs of pensioners and working families over budgetary cuts. Dyer argues that this policy is exemplary of a deeper problem within Starmer's leadership: a lack of accountability and commitment to Labour's promises. Dyer's comments highlight a broader frustration with political leaders who seem more interested in maintaining their positions than in serving the public. By pointing out the failure to uphold Labour's pledges, Dyer raises questions about the authenticity of Starmer's leadership, urging voters to demand greater accountability from those in power. Dyer's disappointment in Starmer is balanced by his praise for Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader. Dyer openly questioned why Rayner, a politician with a strong working-class background and a more relatable public presence, is not at the forefront of the Labour Party. He suggested that Rayner's voice connects more with the working class and that her background makes her a more natural fit for the party's core principles. This viewpoint reflects a divide within the Labour Party, with some members and supporters feeling that figures like Rayner are better suited to lead than Starmer. Dyer's endorsement of Rayner hints at a desire for a Labour leader who can bridge the gap between the party and its base, aligning more closely with the interests and needs of working-class voters. By calling for Rayner's increased visibility and influence, Dyer joins a growing group of voices who believe the Labour Party needs a leader who genuinely represents its values. Dyer's critique of Starmer also connects to his long-standing frustration with the Brexit process and the political establishment's handling of it.
This whole Brexit thing, when you know, you're judging them on Brexit, they don't know nothing about it. Who knows about Brexit?
Yeah, quite.
No one's got a fucking clue what Brexit is, yeah? You watch Question Time, it's comedy.
Well, you know.
Reflecting on the political chaos that then followed after Brexit, Dyer accused past and present leaders of abandoning the UK in a time of need. He pointed out that decisions around Brexit, made by figures like former Prime Minister David Cameron, left the country in a state of uncertainty and division. Dyer's disregard for the Brexit process illustrates a broader frustration with how political leaders, especially those in power during and after the referendum, have dealt with this significant issue. This criticism is not limited to Starmer, but extends to political figures who Dyer feels have avoided responsibility for the UK's challenges. By highlighting the disconnect between these leaders and the realities of Brexit's impact on ordinary citizens, Dyer underscores a sense of betrayal felt by many Britons. His comments remind the public of the ongoing challenges posed by Brexit and suggest that more needs to be done to address its social and economic consequences. Dyer's commentary also touched on Starmer's considered failures in managing tax policy, specifically the rising tax burdens on working-class families. Dyer argues that these policies, which he claims unfairly target those with the least resources, run counter to Labour's historical role as the protector of the working class. The tax increases and lack of promised reforms, according to Dyer, reveal a lack of genuine commitment to easing the struggles of the most financially vulnerable populations. This critique reflects a broader concern among voters who feel that Labour has drifted from its commitment to support working-class families. Dyer's call for fairer tax policies is rooted in a desire for economic justice, particularly in a climate where rising costs are squeezing family budgets. In his sharp critique of Starmer, Dyer's commentary mirrors a wider public frustration with the current political establishment and signals a growing interest in alternative leadership. Dyer noted the recent rise in popularity of figures like Nigel Farage, whom many view as willing to challenge the political status quo. Farage's appeal to disappointed voters, combined with Starmer's unimpressive acceptance among traditional Labour supporters, suggests a potential shift in political allegiances. Dyer's outspoken disapproval of Starmer's leadership highlights a feeling that is becoming increasingly common among British voters: a desire for leaders who are accountable, effective, and genuinely representative of their voters' needs. By criticizing the status quo, Dyer strengthens a movement seeking not only political improvement, but also leaders who are connected to the public and willing to make substantial changes. This demand for reform points to an evolving political landscape in the UK, where voters are looking beyond established parties for leaders who align with their vision of accountability and progress. Danny Dyer's criticism of Keir Starmer has underscored a core issue in modern UK politics: the erosion of public trust due to believed political inaction. Dyer's words reflect the frustration of many voters who feel let down by promises that never materialize into tangible actions. He challenged Starmer to prove that he's a different kind of leader, pointing out that Starmer has yet to show the level of decisiveness and dedication the public expects from a leader. Dyer's remarks tap into a growing sentiment that political leaders, including Starmer, are more focused on holding their positions than on implementing real changes. This impression of inaction is especially problematic for Labour supporters, who had high hopes for a party that promised a break from the laziness of previous administrations.
It's just like this mad riddle that no one knows what it is, right? So what's happened to that twat David Cameron who called it on? Let's be fair.
I think you're referring to our former Prime Minister.
Yeah, but how comes he can scuttle off? He called all this on.
Yeah.
The concept that Starmer's leadership lacks urgency or purpose fuels the public's impatience for a leader who can address the pressing issues affecting their daily lives, from healthcare to housing to the cost of living. A significant element of Dyer's critique centers on his perception that Starmer's position is more a matter of circumstance than of genuine merit. By highlighting Starmer's lack of impactful achievements, Dyer raises questions about the integrity of political appointments and the role that merit should play in choosing leaders. For many voters, the idea that politicians can ascend to power simply due to external conditions, like the Tory party's failures, suggests a broken system. Dyer's skepticism about Starmer's merit reflects broader concerns about accountability in the political process. If leaders can gain or retain power without proving their ability, it risks diminishing the quality of governance and reduces the public's faith in the democratic process. Dyer's outspoken criticism of Starmer also touched on the Prime Minister's foreign policy approach, particularly the potential risks that could arise from stressed relations with key allies like the United States. Dyer expressed concern that Starmer's handling of international relations, especially with figures like former US President Donald Trump, might undermine the UK's standing on the global stage. Such diplomatic tensions could lead to consequences for the UK's trade and security interests, which are critical to its post-Brexit future. For Dyer, the threat of weakened alliances signals a need for a leader who can encourage strong partnerships and represent the UK's interests effectively abroad. This sentiment connects with many who feel that maintaining close ties with powerful allies, particularly the United States, is essential for the UK's security and economic stability.
You deserve a government that listens, that heeds early warnings, that shows the level of ambition needed to tackle the challenges you face.
Dyer's remarks call attention to the importance of diplomacy and how mishandling foreign relations can have profound impacts on domestic well-being. Dyer also emphasized the Labour government's neglect of rural communities and the farming sector, areas he sees as fundamental to British identity. By highlighting the challenges facing the agricultural sector, Dyer points out that many rural areas feel abandoned by a political landscape that often focuses on urban issues. Dyer's support for the farming community reflects a deep-seated frustration among rural voters who believe that their concerns about agricultural policies, land use, and rural infrastructure are overlooked in favor of more high-profile issues. This emphasis on rural issues reveals the disconnect that often exists between policymakers and the countryside. Many rural voters, particularly farmers, face unique challenges such as fluctuating crop prices, environmental regulations, and economic isolation. For them, Dyer's comments serve as a reminder of the importance of rural representation and a call for policies that protect their way of life. Ignoring these concerns, Dyer suggests, risks displeasing a portion of voters who have long contributed to the UK's economy and culture, reinforcing a sense of political neglect in these regions. However, Dyer's frustration with Starmer's policies extends to the treatment of pensioners, a key demographic within Labour's traditional support base. Dyer criticized Starmer's decision to cut winter fuel payments, a move he believes significantly impacts the elderly and could have serious electoral consequences for Labour. For Dyer, Labour's apparent disregard for pensioners' needs contradicts its promises to support vulnerable communities, raising concerns that the party's current policies could disengage a loyal voter base. Dyer's critique highlights the potential fallout from failing to address the needs of pensioners, many of whom rely on government support to afford basic necessities, especially during winter. This issue underscores the importance of balancing fiscal responsibility with social support in ways that protect vulnerable populations. The public response to this policy shift, as Dyer suggests, could impact Labour's ability to maintain its traditional base, as pensioners and their families may turn to alternative parties that promise more direct support. In his sharp criticism of Starmer, Dyer pointed out that the public's dissatisfaction has fueled the popularity of figures like Nigel Farage, who represents an alternative to traditional political leadership. Farage's rising appeal is a reflection of the public's desire for significant change and accountability, particularly among voters who feel let down by mainstream politicians. Farage's popularity, often associated with his direct communication style and bold viewpoints, signals a shift in voter sentiment as the public searches for leaders who can address their concerns. Dyer's comments on Farage highlight a broader movement in British politics where voters are increasingly drawn to outsiders who challenge the establishment. For many, Farage embodies the kind of transparency and sincerity that traditional leaders often lack. Dyer's endorsement of alternative figures like Farage reflects a public willingness to explore new options in leadership, suggesting that the desire for reform and fresh perspectives is a powerful force shaping the future of UK politics. At the heart of Dyer's critique is a powerful call for political reform, rooted in the belief that UK politics needs leaders who are accountable, transparent, and truly representative of the public.
That's why we're ready to listen, ready to partner, ready to serve. A fairer, greener, more dynamic future for British farming. Certainty and change. Stability and success. Environmental stewardship and sustainable food production.
Dyer's open remarks echo a broader movement that calls for greater responsibility and honesty from elected officials, emphasizing that political appointments should be based on merit, not convenience or external failings. This demand for reform is a call to action for both politicians and voters, urging the public to hold leaders accountable and to demand genuine representation in government. Dyer's statements connect with a larger frustration among UK citizens who feel abandoned by the traditional political system and seek leaders who prioritize the needs of their supporters over personal or party interests. His criticism represents a shift in public opinion, signaling that voters are no longer willing to accept politics as usual. This growing sentiment for change, inspired by Dyer and figures like him, suggests a future where accountability and direct representation may become central values in UK governance, reshaping the political landscape as a result. Danny Dyer's explosive criticism of Keir Starmer serves as a powerful reminder of the public's growing frustration with UK politics. His pointed remarks on issues ranging from pension reforms and rural neglect to foreign policy missteps reveal a desire for more accountable, authentic leadership. Dyer's endorsement of working-class representation and calls for genuine political reform echo a collective desire among UK citizens for leaders who are responsive to their needs and willing to uphold their commitments. Ultimately, Dyer's outspoken critique underscores the urgency of addressing these issues if politicians hope to regain the public's trust. His words are a reflection of a deeper unrest with the political establishment, underscoring a demand for leaders who can bridge the gap between politics and everyday life. As voters increasingly seek alternative voices and call for reform, Dyer's comments represent a powerful shift in the political conversation, requesting both leaders and supporters to reimagine the future of UK governance.